6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 81. Ready? Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and in today's episode, we are going to talk about profitable businesses for millennials. But first, a quick message from our sponsor. This episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show is brought to you by High Ticket Program. Did you know you're only 12 projects away from turning your six-figure practice into a thriving seven-figure enterprise? In the High Ticket Program Accelerator, we guide you through every step of growth and scale, a process we call LEAP. Imagine having a world-class project team guiding you and your team through every step of pain-free growth, all with the goal of becoming a seven-figure enterprise and moving away from painful, time-consuming business operations and client delivery. Get a taste of LEAP in your own business by downloading our free high-ticket program core offer black book that contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures for your business, including onboarding, customer service, graduation, financial management, and much, much more. You can get that for free by going to the show's homepage at 6to7.show. That's 6to7.show for your free black book. I am absolutely pleased to introduce today's guest, Amanda Abella. She's featured in Forbes, the Huntington Post, Business Insider. Amanda Abella is a Latina millennial finance expert who created an online community where millennials can learn how to make money online and actually enjoy their financial journeys. Her ever-growing community is currently made up of over 40,000 individuals across social media and email subscriber channels. Amanda, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I think we might be up to 60 now.
60,000.
We might need to update that bio.
And by the time this goes live, who knows?
Who knows? Twitter
growing
just
quickly.
Our Twitter followers have babies. Like.
So we were actually talking a little bit before we got started, kind of pre-interview, about some of the things that your followers are interested in. What do you think are some of the things that are growing your community so quickly? Like, what are some of the content pieces and the topics you're talking about?
So I am very well known for being very transparent and very honest with people. I actually started this journey almost 10 years ago. It'll be 10 years in 2020, where I was a broke 22-year-old who couldn't find a job. And I was like, I'm just going to air out all my financial dirty laundry in hopes of being able to fix it. And whatever, maybe someone will find it helpful. Like, that's as far as it went back then. And now fast forward almost 10 years, and we've worked with some of the top financial companies. I recently did a campaign with TransUnion, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And at the same time, now I've done marketing for most of the major banks in the US. And then on top of that, now I help a lot of small business owners kind of build their own brands and teach them how to do marketing and sales. So what I've learned more than anything is my audience has kind of grown with me in a sense. Like, we have people in our community who've been with me since the beginning. I mean, that's almost 10 years. And what I have found is the reason they stay on is precisely because I'm so transparent. And I guess it's easy for me because I've always been that way. So it's not like I had to try. Sometimes with my clients, they're a little scared to do that because they feel like they have something to lose. I'm like, well, when you're broke and 22 and living at home, you don't have anything to lose. So I was just already in the habit of doing it. So I've always been super transparent and very honest with people. So a couple of the things we've noticed, there's a video that we did about, I think it was like 5 reasons you shouldn't go into entrepreneurship, where I was just great. Like straight up with people.
Yeah.
Right. Another one is I have a podcast episode on all my financial failures of the last 10 years. Right. And the reason I did that, I'm like, some of you are coming to see me now, 10 years in, we have a multiple six-figure business. We've worked with Fortune 500 companies. I'm starting to do real estate investing. Like, you're seeing me now. You didn't see kind of everything that's led up to this. So I will very occasionally go back and teach people like, no, actually I effed up a ton. to get here, to be transparent with them. And that's some of the stuff that we get the most feedback from and the most thank yous from, because I feel like sometimes once people reach a certain level, they become a little bit untouchable. And I don't want to do that. I made a commitment that I was always going to be super transparent. So then this year we're in the process of scaling. I hired my first employee, we got a part-time CFO on board, and I've been talking about that whole process going on behind the scenes and how much I hate scaling. Not hate it, I'm like, but it's not my favorite thing. I like to be on podcasts. I like to be on live videos. I like to be teaching. I like doing sales, right? That's the stuff I like to do. I don't like fighting with CRMs and organizational management. It's not my thing. I don't like it. It's not my jam, but I've had to do it all year. And I've been kind of showing that process behind the scenes. And I recently went out to dinner with one of my students who was in town, and she's like, no one talks about this like you do. Please keep doing it. And I'm like, really?
It's the painful stuff that people want to hear, because frankly, there's enough voices out there for the fun stuff. I mean, there are people who want to talk about launches and all that kind of stuff. Like, there's plenty of that out there, but there's something about telling stories about the real life,
sometimes this really sucks. Here's what you're in for.
That's right.
But it's worth it.
And I think that's probably one of the most helpful things that an entrepreneur can do as helping on other entrepreneurs is to tell the truth, to be honest and forthright about what's the highs and the lows.
Yeah, because, and I don't know if you've had this happen, but I've definitely had experiences where I've been following this person's content or their podcast, or I've been in their programs, and then I meet them in person and they're a total disappointment. To be frank, right? It happens.
It's the old adage, be careful when you meet your heroes kind of thing,
and one of the things that I'm so blessed to hear is, oh my gosh, you're the same in person that you are on your podcast. And I'm like, well, who else would I be? But I understand, like, people put on personas and all this kind of stuff. I get it. But when I first started hearing that, I was like, what? Like, what, who else would I be? What else would I be doing?
That's such a great response to that. Like, who else would I be? Well, I think you've outlined, when I hear you talk about the way that you're interacting with your social media following and your email subscribers, authenticity comes to the top, right? Such a powerful concept. The other thing that you've mentioned that I want to call out, because I think it's brilliant that you do it, and it's really powerful, is the concept of having a journey, of following a journey. And you mentioned that in your intro. You mentioned that as a financial journey, your own financial journey. And I think audiences really love to follow the path. Like, they really love to follow the journey of somebody and see what the real life is, because so much of social media are just these splashes of single images. We look at someone
and a lot
on the
of it is
beach.
complete garbage. Like, let's be real.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So I try and be honest. Sometimes it screws me over in sales, because I'm like, no, man, this is work. And I'm honest with people. And most times people respect me. Sometimes it screws me over in the sense of, like, I don't get this sale, right? But then I find out they go hire someone else, and then that person ghosts them and they're out $9,000, or they hired an agency and they're out $6,000 when they weren't ready for an agency. So, like, you just weren't going to do the work. You were looking for an easy way out anyway. So that's why I'm like, air quotes.
Air quotes. Yeah, that's amazing. So the work that you're doing now, can you tell us a little bit about it? Who are you working with primarily, and what's that look like for them?
Yeah, so I do a lot of spokesperson work with financial companies. For example, I did one with TransUnion where, they had a credit tool that came out. This is one of my favorite things to do, is I did a workshop for all their interns on how credit actually works, right? Nice. So that was a really cool project that we do, and I work on campaigns like that with financial companies. That comes because I spent 8 years doing content marketing for financial companies. And then when I was done with that, I transitioned over into more like spokesperson campaign type work, which is, I love it. Like, I love speaking. I love doing workshops like that. I love doing satellite media tours. It's the stuff I like. I don't like the behind the scenes stuff, as I mentioned, right? And then in addition to that, one of the things I do, because I realized oh my God, this is where it's at. I started to realize that my audience had shifted, and they had shifted from budgeting, paying off debt. They're like, oh God, we're so over this. And on top of that, a lot of them have student loans, because remember, I talked to mostly millennials,
Yeah.
and a lot of it just became a basic math problem of you're just not making enough money. Like, that's it. That's what this is. Right. So I got a little annoyed with the financial industry, because more traditional financial stuff is still like budget and save and don't buy the latte. And I'm like, none of that makes a difference if you're not making enough money to begin with.
Right.
Right. So I started noticing, oh, I shifted, my audience shifted. So I started focusing more on helping small business owners, although I've done a lot of negotiation stuff too for people who are still in regular jobs, but I tend to attract a lot more entrepreneurs and business owners, right, who really need to learn marketing and sales, because those are the two things that change everything. Yeah. The second thing I noticed is that most business coaches out there have no idea how to teach marketing in the proper way. So the way that we teach it is like, it's not just the tactical stuff of like, I don't have time and money, or here's my problem, right? I want you to know these people so deeply that you know emotional blocks that they don't even know they have.
Right. Yeah.
That's what makes the difference.
That's really powerful. The other thing that is really fascinating about what you're describing is this, the power for entrepreneurship to overcome the traditional things that people are dealing with. I have to agree. I don't say this a lot, but so many of the so-called gurus in financial management out there just drive me nuts. Like, and I'm going to call her out, and I'm probably, she's such a name, I'm going to get in trouble for doing this, but I listen to Susie Orman, and it drives me insane.
Yeah. So Susie, she was actually on a friend's podcast, and it turned into a big hoopla because I understood what Susie Orman was trying to say, but a lot of people in the personal finance community did not. And then on top of that, it didn't make sense with a video that came out later. But she was basically saying, like, you need at least 5 million to retire. As she was talking about like her jet or her island or something like that. Yeah. And people in the personal finance community can get really judgy about stuff like that. Sure. Right? Like, people got pissed. Yeah. Right? I totally got what she was trying to say. It's just that the way that she said it didn't really land very well. It wasn't the best delivery. But then a week later, you see a video of her saying that buying coffee is like pissing money down the drain. And I'm like, you did not get your island by not buying coffee. Let's be real. Like that's not how that happened.
That is exactly the issue right there. It's like, because I'm from the financial services space too, like originally. And so, you know, all of the classic services that the financial service industry gives or offers to millennials just completely disconnect. And they sit back in their offices scratching their heads. You know, I mean, it's great for folks like you, because I feel like they have to hire someone like a Rosetta Stone to be able to talk to these folks, but they just don't get it, because they're talking about these classic sort of 1950s sort of ideas about how to live your financial life, when in fact the storyline from the 1950s of single income family, you know, with a home that was already mostly paid off and no student debt and all these sorts of things doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's also a lot of social conditioning. So I've given keynotes at like Fortune 500 companies, and they're like, they're not investing in the 401k. Can you come fix that? Right. And I'm like, no, we're not talking about that. And they're like, what? And I'm like, they're not even ready for that. They're up to their eyeballs in debt. They're not even thinking about a 401k right now. And they're like, okay, we're going to like let you talk about like mindset and stuff. They were so nervous. Right. But they let me do it. Right. Which is awesome. Right. And then I went to go do it, and they flew me out, and I gave the keynote. And it was fascinating because I started asking questions, right? And the human resources group that hired me knew very well what was going on in the lives of the employees. It's the managers and the higher ups who often, like, they're just not connected to it. It is what it is. Like, they're in their offices doing what they got to do. You know, it is what it is. It's no one's fault. It's just conditioning, right? So I started asking questions, and I'm like, well, how many of you have student loan debt? 75% of the room's hands went up. Right? How many of you heard a positive conversation about money in your household growing up? One person raised her hand in the entire auditorium.
Wow.
And afterward, they were driving me to the airport, and they're like, we had no idea it was that bad. Right. And I'm like, that's because I've been here getting the DMs and the tweets and hearing the stories for
sure.
almost 10 years.
Right. Right. I was involved with a company one time that did a culture survey to their employees. And one of the questions they asked is, how many of you could pay off an emergency of $1,000 in cash? And the percentage was so low that they basically sat down like flabbergasted that, all of this conversation about perks and benefits and salaries and stuff. And
they don't care.
The vast majority of their audience was so strapped for cash, or the vast majority, of the employees. Yeah, they can't even think about stuff like that.
Yeah. And then, and here's the other thing, and I didn't bring this up because I knew HR wouldn't be okay with it, but the audience ended up asking me, what about making money on the side? Because they all had side jobs, right? And then HR wasn't too happy about it, but I'm like, I didn't bring it up. They brought it up. Like, this is the reality of the economy that we're living in. Don't buy these job numbers. People are working 2 or 3 jobs right now. Right. So I know these things because, again, I'm in conversation all the time. And you're right. Sometimes I get hired as like the Rosetta Stone.
Well, I mean, especially in the financial services sector and banking sector, for years now, there's been what do we do about the millennials? And for a long time, and this is a black eye, I think, to most of the banking and financial services industry. Up until probably about 10 years ago, the only conversations I ever heard about millennials was millennials have no money, so we don't care about them.
Which is not necessarily true.
Well, no, it's totally not true.
Yeah.
But for forever, I think the financial services industry just sort of ignored an entire sector of the population who, frankly, are going through, I was going to say we're going through, but still are going through a major, I think, personal financial crisis as a generation, and just not enough focus on this at all. So it's the work you're doing is critical.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I work with a lot of financial coaches as clients, and I've worked with a lot of CFPs who now have to go learn about financial coaching. And they're like, what? This isn't what we signed up for, because when you're in like corporate CFP world, it's come on, it's sales, right? Let's be real, right? And then suddenly, they can't get people to even find the money for the investments, and they find themselves having to ask questions like, well, what do you want out of your life? Or like, how can we, and they're like, what? We don't get training for this, right? And this is the stuff we have to start getting clear on. Otherwise, people don't even get to a point where they need a CFP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. And so much of the work, I saw, especially in the United States, I think in the United States, we're a bit behind on this. I think other countries do a little bit of a better job at this, but so much of the financial advice is all around retirement planning. And frankly, I think most people can't even see that far.
Oh yeah. And even the language we use for retirement planning is totally off base, because we say saving for retirement. You ain't saving for retirement. You're investing for retirement.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really good point.
They're not the same thing. And I think another place where there's a lot of confusion is credit. There's a lot of myths out there. People think their whole lives are run by these 3 numbers. They don't realize that, like, hey, whatever you got on Credit Karma, your car dealership doesn't care, and neither does the bank. Like, they don't know these things because they're not privy to it, like someone who's in the financial industry, right? And that's another one that causes a lot of confusion, or they don't know the difference between like leveraging credit for investments and spending money. They don't know the difference, right? They don't know the difference between investing and gambling. So it's stuff like this where there's just a lot of confusion going on. And quite frankly, and the financial industry knows this, right? It's not like they don't know, right? They haven't exactly done a great job of helping the situation.
No, I know. It's one of the reasons why I don't work in that industry. Like I spent a long time there. I've got a book published in that space, and I still won't do it anymore.
But I want to be really clear about something. And because I do work with a lot of financial companies, there are people in these companies who know that these things are going on, and they're trying so hard to change things around. But it's a pretty heavily regulated industry, so they got to deal with that. There's a lot of risk aversion stuff that they have to deal with.
And it's a culture shift, I think.
And it's a culture shift. Yeah, it's a massive culture shift. But there are people in these companies who are really trying.
For sure. Absolutely. I mean, I've seen that shift as well. That's kind of why I said like 10 years ago, there was a real negative view. But I think in the last decade, I definitely see a lot of these companies saying, hey, a millennial, and this is the funny thing. Like, we talk about millennials, like, they're 35-year-old millennials. They're not, this is not a like 18-year-old just out of college anymore. These are,
No.
Professionals. This is a very, very sophisticated and large segment of the population. I
Yeah.
want to turn attention a little quickly, because you have talked about the importance of entrepreneurship and its role essentially as a financial planning tool, where people are earning money on the side. It's a gig economy. But what are some mistakes or the myths that you're seeing millennials make around their assumptions about entrepreneurship or starting a business that's kind of keeping them held back a little bit?
I think there's two major ones that are coming to mind. The hustle 24/7 thing, which is not true. I work less hours than I did when I was making 22 grand a year.
Yep.
Right. I think that's a part of it, but I think there's also this other side of it, which is just manifest your way into some money. And it's like, no, you actually have to work.
Yep.
It's like it's somewhere in the middle of those
Yep.
two things, but
Right.
I've noticed humans have a tendency of going to extremes.
Yeah, we do.
So I would say it was those two things. Another one I see a lot is I've seen a lot of, I've heard some crazy stories lately of people getting like swindled out of like thousands upon thousands of dollars. Yeah. But most times what I've realized when that happens is, what I've noticed is people don't realize, oh, I have to like do market research and I have to put an offering together. And when I start doing sales, all my shit, about money is going to start coming up and I have to deal with it. Like, it's hard. Yeah. Entrepreneurship is like the best personal development program there is.
I agree.
Because you have to deal with your stuff or you're not going to make it.
That is
basically.
Absolutely true. Yeah.
And what I find a lot of people going into is people are in such financial anxiety, and it's not everybody, but most people are in such a state of financial anxiety for various reasons that they're easily manipulated.
Yeah, that's right.
And I've noticed that's a really big problem.
Yep. I almost wish that we were teaching young entrepreneurs or early stage entrepreneurs how to buy business services. Like, how do you actually like do the research on the person that you're thinking of buying? How do you, take a look at your different options and like make a logical decision? Because there's so much emotion tied up in this. And, you've got a lot of entrepreneurs who are selling emotionally, and then a lot of entrepreneurs who are buying emotionally. And it's just this toxic stew of,
it's horrible. And I did a live video on it. I'm like, listen, there are a bunch of narcissists taking advantage of people with really low self-esteem and feeling really anxious right now. Yeah. At the same time, this is a tale as old as time.
Right.
So it's always going to be there. It's always been there. Right. So it's just a matter of you making sure you don't get caught up in that. And what I've noticed more than anything, it's usually people who are very empathic. That's one of the ones that I see. Like, they're so empathic. Like, they really just want to help people.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of them. I've noticed it's also people who, and I joke about this with my own students because I do teach money mindset and abundance mindset, but I make a joke and I'm like, you are limited to an hour a day with your inner child. Like, from 9 to 5, you have to work.
That's funny. That is really good.
Right? Because some of them like to sit in that and then they think they're working. And some people only teach it from that perspective. And that's not to say that these things are not important. They are. I teach them. Right? But there's a difference between, even if you read like the Think and Grow Riches and the Sciences of Getting Riches, all those books, they tell you to go work. Like, no one said don't work.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head. These extreme positions are really unhealthy for anyone. The hustle 24/7 approach, I think, is incredibly self-serving and narcissistic. Like, what people don't understand is that where that came from, because people look at, Mark Zuckerberg and everyone else, and they're talking about hustle. And these entrepreneurs are, I slept in my car and da-da-da-da-da-da. But the thing is, what we don't understand is their audience are their employees. Like, they are talking to the people working for them. Of course they want their
I never
employees to
even
be
thought about it
hustling
that way, but
24/7.
it's true. I
You
never
know,
thought about it that way, but it's totally true.
yeah, that's who they're talking to. So it's
Yeah.
completely horrible for us to like take that lesson and then, because it's completely self-serving to them. And then on the other hand, you know, no one can doubt the importance of positive energy in what you do, but that's not the only thing that's going to get you where you want to go.
No, a lot of people like to stay there. I've also noticed just in general, and this is just like a general society thing, there's just a lot of shame and guilt when it comes to financial things that
Yes.
people have to kind of deal with. And that's what I mean by going a lot deeper. One of my clients right now, she does consulting for business finances, like getting them set up with the tax stuff and profitability. She's almost like the person you hire before you hire a CFO, if that makes sense.
It does. Yeah. Actually.
Yeah. So that's what she does. And I had her go through a market research thing. And she's like, I didn't realize how angry people are at themselves for not having figured this out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She goes, I had no idea.
I mean, you see, I saw a meme today, you know, talking about in school, you know, hey, can you help us understand taxes and how to pay for them? No, don't worry about that. But you know, in that particular meme, it was like,
I'm so glad I learned about like, I'm so glad I learned about like parallelograms and parabolas and all this shit I've never used.
So I was a math teacher for like 10 years, so I totally get this, but we try to stay a little more practical than that. Yeah.
I've never had to measure the circumference of anything in my adult life.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. It's the voices of every math student I ever had in my class. Like, what are we ever going to use this stuff for?
Yeah. Meanwhile, like, and people freak out. And this used to be one of my main things. I used to freak out because I'm like, oh my God, money is so much math and I suck at math. And I didn't realize that. No, actually, this is like actually pretty basic, practical stuff. Yeah. It's not algebra. Right. It's not calculus. It's not any of that stuff.
Yeah. It's pretty basic stuff. So I want to ask you this question before I let you go. So for those people who have a lot of this negative energy around money and finances, I mean, it's so telling when you did that speech and asked how many people had a positive conversation. Only one person raised their hand. What's the step out? How do you get out of that black hole for people?
Oh my gosh. So I think number one, and I think this is really, really important. If you are in an environment where people are having that type of a conversation, you need to start getting around some other people.
Yeah.
I think that's number one. And I don't care. And I don't care if it's online. I don't care if you're going to networking events. I don't care if it's like internet friends. For me, it was internet friends for like years until I met them in person. But you need to start being around another kind of conversation and another way of thinking. If you start feeling a lot of resistance toward that, because some people do, right? Start questioning it.
Yeah. There's such power in the conversations that you're not only having, but that you're a party to or listening to. That negativity, that mindset does sink in. It just seeps into what we're thinking.
Yeah. And even if you had a great conversation at home, all you have to do is walk out the door. Right. And then says everybody else's stuff about money, because it's all social conditioning.
That's true.
Right. Starts to hit you like a 2x4 in the head. So you have to be super, super mindful of it. I mean, I think it starts off with questioning your own beliefs about money. And what I have found with my clients is that inevitably turns into questioning your beliefs about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. At the base, right? That's, and this loops back to one of the comments that you made earlier, which I absolutely love, which is that entrepreneurship in particular, but I think most money things, but entrepreneurship is a journey in self-discovery and in transformation. You know, that's what I tell people. I'm the whole reason we do business growth work is because it's a transformational experience. I mean, the most fun conversations, although the ones I kind of laugh at my clients about, friendly laugh, but is when they tell me, you know, they want to grow from 6 to 7 figures, but they're really uncomfortable. It's like, yeah, this is this is going to be uncomfortable. Like,
Yeah. Oh, I've
this
had
is not a fun
clients.
journey.
I've had clients start crying. Their limit was like 250,000 a year, and
Sure.
they'd start bawling.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And there's a lot that goes into it. I mean, it's what you grew up with. It's whatever there's a lot.
Yeah.
That goes
I
into
had
it.
a client tell me that she didn't think she was worthy to make 7 figures. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there for sure.
Yeah. Or sometimes people are afraid they'll have to compromise their integrity and their values to get there. That's the most common one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I hear that a lot too. Amanda, I would love to continue this conversation, but we've unfortunately run out of time, and you've been generous with your time to overstay my welcome for this interview. So thank you very much. But I could keep talking with you about this for a very long time, because clearly we're seeing eye to eye on a lot of stuff. Thanks so much for making the time for us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me to talk about one of my favorite topics ever.
Yeah, my pleasure. So as the audience is listening, if they want to connect with you, what's a good way for them to do that?
So I actually have a freebie for them, because your audience, you told me kind of where your audience is at right now, and they're doing pretty okay. But I'm pretty sure your audience would like it if they got more media attention for their businesses, so they can get more leads. It's actually quite easy. It's not as difficult as people make it out to be, and you don't have to spend a ton of money on a PR company. It's unnecessary. I've had clients get full features in Forbes without having to pay a dime to a PR company. Nice. So you just really have to learn how to pitch. So if they actually go to Abella, AB as in boy, ELLA.com/pitch, PITCH, they can sign up and they can get the exact email template I used to get on Entrepreneur on Fire back when my book launched. 17 Business Insider. I was recently on Univision. It really just comes down to that pitch and doing it properly. And what I've noticed, having been on the editorial side of things for as long as I was, is most people don't know how to pitch.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. That's that it is all about being able to communicate and connect with the things that's important to the editor. So
and it's usually a very basic email. It's not even that big of a deal, like maybe 5 minutes to write the email, bang it out. And my assistant, I taught her how to do this, and she started getting bites within 24 hours. So if you go to amandaabella.com/pitch, you can get it totally for free.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's a really gracious offer. The link is below the video. If you're on YouTube, if you're listening on the show notes page, it's there. If you're out and about listening, come on back to the show notes page. You can click on through to connect with Amanda on that gracious offer. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
You are welcome.
And thank you so much for being with us on the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I've been your host, Frank Bria, and just a quick reminder about the high-ticket program Core Offer Black Book. Contains more than 60 pages of standard operating procedures on how to run your coaching, consulting, or expert-based service business. You can download that for free at the show's homepage, 6to7.show. That's 6to7.show for your free Black Book. See you on the next episode of the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Make it happen.